There was a vet with PTSD. He went to the VA hospital for help. He was struggling with his PTSD. They did not have the mental health care resources in the emergency room, so they released him. He went out into the parking lot and blew his head off.
Vet taking his own life inside that hospital.
According to police, the 33-year-old man shot and killed himself on VA grounds. And tonight,
that's a travesty. That could have been avoided.
Military veterans are 22% more likely to commit suicide than non-military members.
You get out, you're like a fish out of water, gulping for air. Anybody help me? How do I make it through this process?
Officials here at the VA Medical Center in Phoenix say that this case is particularly hard because they feel like this veteran was so close to getting the help he needed. He killed himself right inside of the parking lot here at the VA Medical Center.
I was creating a beautiful flower, and it wasn't until I was done and I was able to step back and look at the piece that I could see the skull faces that were in each petal of my flower. And I said, wow, you know, why is that there? And their mouths are open and it looks like things are coming out of their mouth. And what I realized is that all of the angst and struggles and pain that I was feeling indirectly was translated into the piece of art. My name is Gina Ruggiero, and I'm Senior Vice President and CEO of the Creative Drill Sergeants Expressive Arts Academy. In the military, I was a KC-10A crew chief, airplane mechanic. I was one of 3 females in a squadron of 500 men. I was just as strong and tough as the guys on the flight line. Used to pick up and carry a 100-pound toolbox across the flight line. I had the first accident where I was hit by a military truck, and that's where I got the head injury and the neck injury. Then I was vaccinated with my boosters for deployment, and then I went AWOL. And they found me nearly dead with 105.9 fever. They took me to Camp Lejeune. I spent about a month in Camp Lejeune. No answers as to why I was so sick. And then when I came back to the base, because I was a quote unquote weak female, I got targeted and gang raped for 2 days. Because they knew that I would report it, they started rumors. So when I got to my duty station, I had an Article 15 recommendation waiting for me, which is kind of like a felony in the military. You can actually go to Leavenworth for an Article 15 or be dishonorably discharged. Luckily, none of the witnesses came forward and the Article 15 was dropped, but the result was that I never spoke about it again for, 18, 19 years. That, profoundly changed my life, because there were many times during that process that I wanted to just off myself. I thought, what am I doing this for? I mean, it would just be so much easier if I wasn't here anymore. And I hear that at least 2-3 times a week from my comrades. There are multiple times throughout the day when I'm dealing with veterans that are calling me on the verge of suicide, on the verge of homelessness or entering homelessness and suicidal.
Did you know nearly 9 million American veterans have chosen VA healthcare? almost half of all veterans, and many more may be eligible. Did you know VA provides health care exclusively to veterans and their families? And 1 out of every 3 employees of the Veterans Health Administration is a veteran. No one understands your needs better.
A lot of times they say there's services for our vets, but they're either services that they know nothing about, there's not enough information out there. One of the things I said to the VA was, if I cannot get help in a timely manner, how can you possibly expect me to help other veterans stay alive and not end up homeless? The VA system is broken.
– 2017 has been a year of accomplishments for the Department of Veteran Affairs, and this is a perfect time to reflect on and acknowledge and thank all of those who have enabled our many accomplishments for veterans during this past year. It's been a very difficult environment. It's been one where we've been distracted from our mission, and hopefully we have a chance now to get back on target to make sure that we are making the types of continued transformations for veterans that they deserve, to have a VA that works for them.
"26 days feels as though you're not important, especially when you're in a mental health crisis. It's really the difference between life and death in many cases.
We are not getting these veterans in a timely fashion. When they're going through something, they're going through it, and they're going through it now.
If anything, I was to tell a VA, man, just have this stuff not take so long, because, you know, if you keep hearing horror stories, because not only does my experience matter, but the experience that I hear from others matter, you know, so that I can go to the VA and get my stuff taken care of in a timely manner.
Timely treatment is extremely important, because I've seen firsthand patients that are going through the PTSD. What's happening is our autonomic nervous system is responding. It's saying there's too much, too fast, too quick. And when we're trying to assimilate and understand that information, we don't have the tools, or the veterans don't have the tools sometimes, to help them reframe and repatternize.
I've been going to the VA for 50 years. And it's just in the last few, I've noticed they get overwhelmed, and sometimes you don't get as good as treatment as you used to, simply because of the numbers.
One of my goals here is not to further the divide between the veteran and the VA. However, it's very difficult, especially when they're struggling in a mental health crisis. They're not thinking clearly. They need guidance.
When somebody goes through a PTSD experience, they actually start to patternize in a negative way, and they start doing negative repeated patterns. And so in our Expressive Arts Academy, we really try to give those veterans other options and choices.
Vietnam was a very traumatic experience, because we didn't know whether we were gonna live or die. It was that bad. Some of the guys that they didn't come back, and I knew, you know, some of us wasn't gonna make it. Being an artist, I would try to escape where I was at by drawing. I wanted to do a painting for myself and to my fellow veterans. It all has meaning. We live for that mail from our family and friends. That's what we want, our mail. Even though the war was going on around us, hey man, give me my mail. The girls on the pole, black and white photos, they're the girls that dumped us while we were over there. I always tell people that, they get a laugh out of that. And that's why I put it in the painting. And if you read that letter up close, it's a letter from my mom, partly in Spanish, partly in English, and it kind of says it all. The date on the letter that he's holding, that's actually me holding it, reading it, is the date I got shot.
There's a huge avoidance factor with PTSD. There's always the questions, well, why aren't you just going and getting it done? Just go access the services, go talk to the people. But what they don't realize is that it's a wall in front of you.
I didn't even know I had PTSD until I start talking to them and start reliving what you went through. You just kind of bear, you don't think about it, you don't talk about it. And when I did want to talk about it, ain't nobody want to hear about my experiences. It helped me to talk about it. But most people didn't want to hear about what I went through.
That, for our vets, that avoidance factor, I think is one of the biggest, most critical issues with PTSD, is that it becomes so arduous a task to break that wall down.
The idea of healing is really a process. And the first thing is communication internally. You've got to kind of face all those things and then realize that it's a very human element. You know, a lot of PTSD is based on an over-lingering of fear, anxiety, and you can counteract that in a sense by being open and being positive and allowing yourself the freedom of communication.
Expressive art therapy is a naturopathic type modality because we're pairing the mind-body soul component. Expressive arts help you to pattern in a positive direction. When you are creative and you use your creative outlet, you feel in charge, you feel discharged of those negative emotions, you feel happy. You can feel joy and laughter because you're actually painting in colors or you're singing out loud. You're using all parts of the body to be able to express yourself.
Monsters, they set me free. I found my sanity.
It helps them with a long-term benefit response.
This is a lady who is PTSD from various experiences in active warfare as well as rape. And so having a time with adjustment, I was introduced to her. At the top it says, near the shadow there is light. That's why there's a shadow, because somewhere there's light. And my wife's wonderful addition to that was, some didn't die, but they gave you their lives. So the point there is that those who did come back did live through it, that still they may have given you their life, and you should appreciate what they're going through because of that. This was a big contribution to do something that I personally know is a void with the Veterans Administration. And the VA itself has nothing else approaching anything to do with aesthetics in your life or helping you to get your mind off of the terrible things that happened to you.
The commonality amongst veterans is that they need stability. They were in this environment that gave them stability within the services, and they were able to get directives and direction, and they had that whole type of environment built for them. They come out of that and they don't necessarily have that. And so that's what we strive for at CDS and in naturopathic medicine, is to create that safe zone again.
I thought the grass would be greener on the other side, but I was shocked that reintegration was not easy. I lost my purpose. I didn't know what I was supposed to do or who I was supposed to be. And it wasn't until I met our president, Mitchell Cabanis, that I discovered that purpose again and how important it is for my own healing and my family's healing to be involved in the lives of my comrades and their families. So what we're doing here is giving them the ability to have a continued expressive outlet.
When you think about leaving your family to begin with, like I was 19 years old, had never been away from home. The military molded me into the soldier that I was. So to come back home, there was no sense of training or no sense of like integration process to where, you know, I was molded back into a civilian. That training did not, you know, exist or really take place at the time. So I really felt kind of like a fish out of water experience.
When they're in the military, they know what their purpose is. They know what they're supposed to do. You get out, what am I supposed to do, especially if you have disabilities?
I can be trained to kill. I can be trained and tactically proficient in my job and my skills as a medic. I can be trained to save a life, but to be trained to become a civilian again, it didn't happen. One of the hardest things with being a soldier, and you know, when your battle buddy's going through it, you're going through it too. You know, there is no just you're out there on your own type thing. If one of us is struggling, we all, in essence, carry a piece of that burden. That's why I feel like Creative Drill Sergeants is such an important place and an important organization, because we're really helping to bridge that gap for veterans that are coming home and help ease that integration process, which really is not addressed in any true sufficient way. So expressive arts really comes in handy to help us manage and work through that process.
We have a lot of veterans that say, well, I can't draw. And what I say to them is, you know what, it's not about whether or not you can draw. It's about what happens to the brain when you put pencil to paper.
To be able to paint their story out loud and be able to express themselves that way. And once we do that, we actually see different patterns of the brain response happening. When you're using that energy in a positive way, you're actually discharging those chemical signals from your body. And that's a powerful thing.
And so what we're trying to do here is teach our veterans how to not only heal themselves, but bring their family along as a unit and implement these trauma-informed care practices into their own life. And then they too become mentors. We've had quite a few veterans that have come through our program that are now moving up into that position of mentoring. That means a great deal to me.
There's always going to be a struggle, a strife, a trial or a tribulation that you'll experience. And when you have a support system that you can turn to, when you have folks that rely on you and help give you really purpose to keep doing what you're doing, it can be like a breath of fresh air at the end of a 5K type situation. That second win when you just don't feel like you got nothing left to give, but then all of a sudden you had that burst of energy. Like, that's what family really provides.
Being in the military is pretty, that experience alone, I don't care what branch of service you're in, there's a camaraderie amongst veterans that have served. It's helped me, and there's not too many organizations like that.
And maybe art is not necessarily their thing, but again, it's not whether or not you're going to be an artist or not, it's the process of what doing that art can do to heal. This one is Twisted Thoughts. That's exactly how I felt inside, was just this perpetual wheel of torture and stress. And so, that's that, but then look at the beauty that comes out of it. So when we use expression for something positive, the beauty that transcends that is amazing.
At the Expressive Arts Academy, we share stories, we are creating connections, but we're also be able to get better at communication, being able to get better at talking with each other. A lot of what we're doing at Expressive Arts Academy is for people to get on-the-job training. You're learning entire skills that could, in essence, even change your life.
It goes back to that economic stability factor. If you're enjoying what you're doing, you're more likely to be productive. You're more likely to succeed at what you're doing. You may not have an actual outlet, a place to go to do expression, but expression comes from inside. And it's really about finding your passion, finding what motivates you, because expressive arts really transcends so many different avenues. You know, there's so many different ways to express yourself, to get started. We're gonna be doing more events. We're gonna be out there in the community, not just for our comrades, but also for the community to be a part of what we're doing.
There's absolutely no reason why these people in these community settings that are doing beautiful creative things like creative drill sergeants shouldn't be part of that structure of the VA system and be part of that program so that veterans in their communities can reach out. A lot of times, just like most people, you don't want to go into the hospital setting. You want to be comfortable in your community. And the best enlightenment happens when people are comfortable, they feel cared for, and they're in that type of home environment.
We don't want to lose any more of our veterans to suicide. It's unnecessary. This program, what we're doing, we can really help heal not just the veteran, but their family as well. That's what drives me every day to get up and work through my own pain and my own illnesses, is to share that with my comrades. And I'm not alone. That's the biggest thing, is that I'm not alone.